able to have a little fun in our breakout rooms. We're thrilled that you're here today. For those of you who did not get a chance to hear my little tiny introduction earlier, my name is Janet Ward Black. I'm one of the hosts this evening, along with Legal Aid of North Carolina. You may see that we're actually recording this so that if there are other people who would like to see it in the future or you would like to refresh your recall about it, you'll be able to do that. This is our ninth annual Top 50 Women Super Lawyers reception. A few years ago, I figured out that there was not a good way for a number of these women to have an opportunity to get together, to be able to meet each other, because practice areas are so different and a lot of times paths don't cross. So I contacted my friend George Housen at Legal Aid of North Carolina and said, what do you think about us putting a little event together? And we started it in Raleigh, we moved to Greensboro, and this is now our very first Zoom call. So I hope you'll bear with us as we try to figure out how to make things work. We would love to be able to be with you in person, and I'm very sorry that we're not able to do that. But I hope that you'll enjoy this next hour that we have planned for you. There's some really special people who are participating this evening, and then we'll be able to spotlight our top 50 winners later on as well. So we have a really unique opportunity this year as well, because tomorrow is the 100th anniversary of the signing of the 19th Amendment into law. It's a rather remarkable thing. It frankly is not perfect because it mostly affected white women being able to vote in the United States. And I frankly am astonished that my great grandmothers did not have the right to vote. That just kind of blows my mind. But Native Americans didn't get that right until many years after that in the 1950s. And a number of African American people didn't get that right until the Voting Rights Act in '65. So it's not perfect that we celebrate this 100th anniversary, but we thought it was at least showing a step in the right direction. So that's why this opportunity has come upon us to give a little nod of the hat to 100 years of women being able to vote in the United States. Not all, but some. We are going to have a really fun evening, I think. We're going to be joined by our Chief Justice in just a second. Then you're going to get to hear from our other sponsor, Legal Aid of North Carolina, through George Housen and a couple of his friends. We know that lawyers are important, and frankly that there are lawyers all over this country who that people can't afford lawyers in really important, crucial circumstances in their lives. So we are thrilled to be able to let you hear from one of Legal Aid of North Carolina's lawyers and hear from one of their clients. We have a very special keynote speaker that I'm very excited about, and then we'll be identifying our dignitaries and our top 50 women as well. Now, what you see right now is called a spotlight view. So if you're one of our dignitaries or one of our top 50 people, this camera is going to come on to you when I say your name. So make sure that if you're, got something in your teeth, you try to take care of that before we come to the time where we're announcing the dignitaries along with our top 50 winners. Now let's see what else I'm supposed to talk about here. Oh yes, we're trying to keep everybody muted. So if you'll do that, that would be wonderful. Our speakers, you will have to unmute yourself when it's your time. So please remember to do that. And let's see what else we need to talk about here. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. So I'm going to introduce our first two speakers. The second speaker is George Housen, who's the Executive Director of Legal Aid of North Carolina. Most of you know that Legal Aid of North Carolina was created by a group of volunteers who came together and said, we really need to have a law firm to help people who can't afford lawyers. And George has been doing that for the complete Legal Aid of North Carolina organization since 2002. You may wonder how somebody can help oversee trying to provide legal services to 3 million people in North Carolina, and George is absolutely the right man. He served as a Peace Corps volunteer. He came to us from Chicago before that. And George, I just want to remind you, be on your best behavior, and that you're supposed to come up and speak immediately after our next presenter. And I'm particularly excited to introduce, and I hope that she's on camera because I don't see her quite yet, is Chief Justice Cheri Beasley. For those of you who have not seen Chief Justice Beasley on a Zoom call in the last 6 months, you have been under a rock. We are extraordinarily fortunate to have her be able to present to us this evening. I am thrilled about what she's been able to do. And isn't it wonderful? Oh, I forgot to tell you something. Use the chat feature. Celebrate people, comment to folks, clap, use the little raise your hand thing. Comment back, because right now all we're getting is sort of dead air. And so use that to communicate or ask questions. So here we've gotten the opportunity to see Chief Justice Beasley in a remarkable time. She had really hoped that she was going to be able to focus on expanding treatment courts and leveraging technology. Well, isn't it ironic that we have had technology forced on us in a way that we didn't expect? Maybe in your Zoom breakouts, you had an opportunity to talk about how WebEx or Zoom mediations have changed your practice. But what a remarkable time to be serving as Chief Justice, and for Cheri Beasley, the first woman Chief Justice who is African American in our state's history. She came to us from the trial bench. She was a district court judge in Cumberland County. She then went to the North Carolina Court of Appeals before she became a justice on the North Carolina Supreme Court. And she took over the helm as Chief Justice last year. I'm sure she had no idea what she was getting into with what's happened this year. Her education came from Rutgers University. She went to the University of Tennessee School of Law, go Vols, and then went to one of my alma maters, Duke University School of Law, for her LLM. She's a member of First Baptist in Raleigh. She's married and has twin sons. So hopefully, if the Zoom gods are with me tonight, you're going to see Cheri Beasley next. Welcome, Chief Justice Beasley.
Thank you so much, Janet Ward, and thank you so much for bringing us together in this way every single year to celebrate women lawyers. And it makes so much sense that you would come up with this really authentic way for us to really be excited about our talents and our contributions to our profession and to our communities. And it makes sense that it would be you because you are, of course, indeed a super lawyer as well. I greet my colleagues and to every single person here this evening. What a wonderful opportunity for us to come together. Janet Ward is correct. None of us thought that we would be in the middle of a pandemic. And frankly, all of that is compounded by heightened racial tensions and protests around North Carolina. So this is really quite a time. Janet Ward offered a synopsis around the challenges of women gaining the right to vote. And certainly that happened in some part through the ratification of the 19th Amendment. I think it's important to think about the struggle for women having the right to vote, not just in this country, but around the world. And I think it's also important that though there are no literacy tests, no poll taxes, none of those kinds of barriers to the right to vote now, I want you to know that though the United States Supreme Court long ago declared those things unconstitutional, it still remains a fact in North Carolina that there is a requirement that any person who registered to vote must be able to read and write in English. That is the North Carolina Constitution, Article 6 and Section 4. And so I think it's also important for us to remember that the 19th Amendment was about, frankly, more than just the right to vote. Certainly the right to vote is hugely important, but really it was about full citizenship for women. And when you think about the women who we're here to honor this evening, and when you think about all of the many things that they've accomplished and all the ways that they've made contributions, that's really what the purpose of the 19th Amendment was about. It was about guaranteeing women the right to vote and the right to serve and the right to be and the right to live in the ways that they so chose. And so I think that's hugely powerful that Janet Ward would bring us together on the cusp of Women Equality Day. So I think that's hugely powerful again. I think it's also important that we honor and thank George Housen for the work that he and his staff do day in and day out, and their full commitment to serving those who have unmet legal needs and who are living in poverty. They are people who always step up. And I think it's important for us as we think about the challenges around this pandemic and around heightened racial tensions in North Carolina. Number one, it's important for us to think about how these challenges have presented themselves to us and how we've really been given an opportunity because the challenges always push us to do better, to be better. We do now know that we can do more virtually, but we also know that communities around us need us all. And so I know that George and his team would appreciate it if we all would be willing to step up to help those who are less fortunate in our communities. Roughly 25% of North Carolinians qualify for legal services from legal aid organizations. And those organizations, of course, include Legal Aid of North Carolina, Charlotte Center for Legal Advocacy, and Pisco Legal Services. And these organizations really work to bridge the access to justice gap for eligible North Carolinians, which is quite a lofty charge. I think everyone here knows that we're here to support legal aid, and George and his team. The funding for legal aid has been cut drastically. And one of the ways in which we can be supportive is that the rules of professional conduct advise us as lawyers to perform at least 50 hours of pro bono service every year. And I'm excited about the fact that there is an honor society of members who perform tens of thousands of pro bono hours every year. And I think that's really important to support legal aid, which even though their efforts are noble and of great import, there's no way that they can possibly meet all of the unmet legal needs of those in North Carolina who need them. So we all must step up to the plate in the way that we can and in the way that we ought. I'd like to also tell you that certainly we all know that in this pandemic, the legal needs will be even greater than they were before. They were great before, and certainly they will be compounded. And we know that going forward as this pandemic continues, we will hear and know more and more about what people really need. I'd like to share with you that I'm very excited that we have created the North Carolina Faith and Justice Alliance. We are bringing together faith communities all across North Carolina and clergy to recognize legal issues and to refer those folks to legal assistance at no cost to them. We're excited about the lawyers who are volunteering their time. And we're also excited about the opportunity to partner with Legal Aid to assist them and to support their efforts and for them to offer some training opportunities to lawyers and to clergy persons. And I'm also pleased to tell you about the COVID-19 Small Business and Nonprofit Initiative, which helps people and businesses and small businesses and nonprofits through dissolution and a host of other issues. Lawyers are providing those services at no cost. You may go to ncfaithandjusticealliance.org for more information on the Faith and Justice Alliance, and ncprobono.org for information on the COVID-19 Small Business and Nonprofit Initiative. I know that with all of the challenges, because I've heard the babies crying in the background, I've heard the dogs barking, I've heard all of that during this pandemic since we are operating virtually. And it's really been beautiful to talk with lawyers very differently and to really meet them at a very different level around humanity. And so I know volunteering is difficult, but I would urge each of us to offer ourselves in the ways that we possibly can, to know that there is training available if you're willing to help and assist legal aid in the very fine work that they do. And all of us count ourselves fortunate that even during this time of crisis, that we're here and able to serve. I'm super excited about our keynote speaker this evening, Judge Allegra Collins, who is wonderful in her own right and truly a servant leader. And I'm just so grateful that each of us has been able to come together to celebrate women who are doing good every single day in their professional and personal lives and around their communities. And that we've been given an opportunity to do better, to serve, and to really help people along the way. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. And George Housen, we'd like to hear from you next.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I'd like to thank you for those nice remarks about legal aid. I'd also like to thank Janet Ward for sticking me in with a subgroup of people who are all smarter than me. Of course, that was inevitable. But then you stick me behind the Chief Justice, one of the most magnificent speakers in the state. So I don't know how I wronged you, but there it is. Thanks. Welcome to all of our members of the judiciary and our distinguished guests. We're pleased to have you, and a special thanks to Janet Ward and her staff, the extraordinary staff from Ward Black Law, for doing all that you've done across many years to support this work. I mean, we really couldn't do it without you. I think it's a little ironic. Let me tell you, I've got 2 minutes. Let me just tell you a little bit about legal aid and extol the virtues of all my colleagues a little bit. It's a little ironic that we're celebrating 100 years of suffrage for women. That's a mark of equality. That's wonderful. But I have to tell you that 76% of the women who we serve, of those 3 million in poverty, they're in poverty. 76% of the clients we serve, I should say, are female heads of household. That's an extraordinary number. So we know we have a long ways to go in that regard. At Legal Aid here, we cull and we triage over 50,000 cases and matters from over 200,000 calls that we receive every year requesting services. And certainly we can't serve all of those people. During all of this pandemic since March, I have to tell you, Lance, Legal Aid of North Carolina has operated at full tilt. We haven't lost a step. Our intake procedures have been fully operational. We've handled our normal caseload while expanding outreach. We're doing Facebook Live and Zooms for the public. We're doing Q&As. We're getting all the information out there. You may not know this, but our disaster recovery team, the result of the largest special grant that the Legal Services Corporation has given out, is operating fully in the 31 counties, still working on Hurricane Matthew cases from 2016 and Hurricane Florence cases from 2018. There are still people out there recovering from those hurricanes, and here we are, 2 hurricanes in the Gulf, and we're off and running again on hurricane season. In addition to all of that, of course, Legal Aid is one of the leading agencies to enroll our clients in healthcare insurance every year. We're the leading grant recipient for CMS in North Carolina, and we do thousands of enrollments into the ACA every year, in addition to the legal work we do. We fully consider that legal work, that's government affairs work for us. So it's important that you know that we're doing all of that. And we're not neglecting the legal work either. I think Cia Pistolis and our appellate team, we've done fully 10 appeals since March. I don't know how many law firms have done that many, but certainly Legal Aid has. So we're meeting the crisis in evictions and foreclosures that are facing thousands. Not only are we providing the legal work, but we've been advocating for rental assistance funding, which we've obtained for localities and special entitlements. So we're taking money to negotiate extended terms. We're not taking money to provide lawyers. We're taking money so that we can pass that money on to clients and keep them in place and prevent them from going homeless during this crisis. And we're handling that. They couldn't find nonprofits to administer those funds, so Legal Aid is doing it. Our accountants on the margin are doing that. We've been present in the DV courts, as the Chief Justice can tell you, without interruption since the beginning of the pandemic. Even when some of the DV shelters and the advocacy groups have abandoned the field, Legal Aid expanded its intake and has continued on because the level of commitment of our colleagues and our lawyers and their passion, that's what they bring to this work. They won't quit. We've broadened our capacity to take on public benefits and unemployment insurance benefits cases in this pandemic where it's lacking, where it's been lagging with the stimulus, even going so far as when the IRS put a next day deadline on stimulus packages for children, we called hundreds, perhaps 600 clients individually. We put teams together overnight and alerted 600 clients that they were eligible for this so they could beat the deadline of noon the next morning. So I just wanted to tell you all of that. And you need to know this is the Legal Aid is well set up to host this event. Not only do we serve women, but I'm basically the moral equivalent of the guy who keeps the Xerox machine full of paper. 80 to 85% of the lawyers and the staff in Legal Aid of North Carolina are women. Fully 85% of the management team here. You know, we're in 20 locations. We've got 15 statewide projects. Most projects are led by women who provide the strategic initiative and the elbow grease to get that work done, and the smarts and the creativity as lawyers. So this really is a firm run by, organized by, and produced by women. And so I think we're well set up to do that. And I'm particularly pleased then that you should hear from one of our clients, and we have a special treat for you, Jasmine Plott from our Foothills office, which is in Morganton, and a special welcome, please, for Miss Mary Allen. And they're going to tell you how Miss Allen was represented by Jasmine and how she benefited from the work that Jasmine did for her at Legal Aid. So I will turn it over to you, Jasmine.
Thank you so much, George, for that introduction. I'm Jasmine Plott, and this is Mary Allen, my client. So I'm going to go ahead and provide a little bit of background for you all. As George mentioned, I'm a staff attorney here at the Foothills office in Morganton, North Carolina. And as a part of our work, even though we're based in Morganton, we also serve Alexander County, Burke County, Caldwell County, Catawba County, and McDowell County. And it's actually in Catawba County where Miss Allen's case comes from. So when the Allen's case was referred to me, this was in May, but what had been going on was much longer than that. Their landlord had been trying to evict Miss Allen and Mr. Jones, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, since March. But as we know, things didn't go quite as planned this year, and there were a lot of closures and delays in the court system. So their case was continued out to April. At that time, things were still going on, and so their case got continued again. And at that point, their landlord terminated their water service to their home. And so Ms. Allen and Mr. Jones did the best that they could to get it back, but I'm very glad that you all reached out to us. I'm so glad that you got in touch with us, because even though we worked together, it really was such a team effort to get there. We were able to get a temporary restraining order. Unfortunately, that still didn't convince the landlord to turn the water back on, but at the preliminary injunction hearing, that was enough to get the water back on. And while I'd like to say that was the end of things, we still had to have the eviction hearing in small claims court, and that was heard earlier this month. And we were again successful. Yep. And it's been great to see and get to know you throughout this process, Ms. Allen. So I'm going to let you take it away now and share your story with everyone.
Yes, it's been very hard. It's been very difficult. I've suffered so many nights on wanting to do something with our landlord to where it was just unbearable. So I just broke down and said, call your mom. So my mom was like, go ahead and call Legal Aid. They're the best people for you right now. I know you don't have the money to get within the lawyers. Just call Legal Aid. So I called Legal Aid. Jasmine thought she was right there, right on it. She was absolutely wonderful. And if I could recommend anybody to Legal Aid, it will be anybody that needs the service. Just completely needs the service. If you feel that you're being unlawfully, doing something wrong, or think your landlord doing something wrong, please call Legal Aid. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I just can't tell you how much I appreciate Ms. Allen being willing to be with us tonight and share part of her story. And hopefully all of us can see a little bit better about how legal aid can make a real difference. And doesn't it make you feel good as a lawyer about how Ms. Allen feels about how the legal system has helped her? And what an honor for us to be able to support that activity. So, you know, I mentioned that we've been doing this for 9 years. And many of you may know that we've been collecting money for legal aid for that period of time. And we want to make it where women lawyers, particularly leaders in the law, want to support the provision of legal services to those who are less fortunate. And I wanted to let you know that in this period of time, we have raised over $60,000 for Legal Aid of North Carolina. And I'm very, very proud of each of you for your contributions with respect to that. You're going to see in the chat here in a minute an opportunity to make a donation this evening, either through the chat online or give you the information out about being able to mail a check if that's your preference. You'll see on this slide that's coming up that all you need to do is go to legalaidnc.org/donate, and we hope that you will do that. If not us, who? We do have a $5,000 anonymous match to avail ourselves of. So we ask that you go ahead and donate. Do so in the next day or two, if you will. And you can go to that legal aid site. And if you wish to, in the notes, you can put top 50, and that will indicate so that we can get that as part of our tally. And if you go to the online section, you actually can select which legal aid office or program you would like to support. So you can kind of customize it. Think of it as sort of Starbucks for legal aid, that you can have it in the area or the program type that you're interested in. Okay, so it's now time for us to identify some of our dignitaries. So you dignitaries, please kind of sit up straight and have your cameras on. Now we have to have mercy on the poor souls who are trying to find in our 100 and some attendees tonight where these folks are. So just bear with us, and it's going to be a little quiet. So we've already heard from George Housen and Chief Justice Beasley, but we're fortunate to have some other folks from the North Carolina Supreme Court. So let me welcome Justice Robin Hudson, who has been a chronic attender of our events. Thank you so much, Justice Hudson, for being here. And then one of her folks in arms, Jimmy Urban. Another one of Sam Urban IV's claims to fame is he went to Davidson College, and you're going to hear a little more about Davidson later. And then we also have Justice Anita Earls from the North Carolina Supreme Court. So if anybody, wouldn't you love to be in person, that you would have 4 of the Supreme Court coming to our event? That's pretty cool, isn't it? We also have Chief Judge Linda McGee from the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Thank you, Judge McGee, one of our former speakers. Delighted to have you be with us and be such a constant support. You're going to get to meet Judge Allegra Collins from the North Carolina Court of Appeals in just a minute. And then we also have Judge Lucy Inman from the North Carolina Court of Appeals present as well. We also have a couple of folks from the trial bench. One is Brian Collins, Superior Court judge that I'll introduce in just a second, along with Judge Laura Cubbage. Judge Laura Cubbage is here in Guilford County. She's also running for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And then another one of our dignitaries is Kim Crouch. Kim is the Executive Director of the North Carolina Advocates for Justice, and we are delighted to have Kim here. And then Adrienne Kennedy is present, I believe, as well, who is a member of the Legal Aid of North Carolina Board of Directors. And I may be talking too fast, and so they can't find. So Judge Cubbage, you're getting a lot of airtime here as a result of maybe the absence of being able to find folks easily. We're also supposed to have Judge Clayton Morgan, who is the Legal Aid of North Carolina Board Chair. Thank you so much for being a part of our evening, and we hope that we'll be doing good things, Adrienne Kennedy and Clayton Morgan, for Legal Aid's board. We also have Celia Pistolas. Many of you know that Celia has been the head of litigation for Legal Aid for many years and has done some really extraordinary work. So Celia, thank you so much for being a part of this evening. And then lastly, Yvette Stackhouse is also with Legal Aid of North Carolina. She is the Director of Compliance. And we thank you, Yvette, for everything amazing that you do for the people of North Carolina. So now I'm going to bring you back to Judge Brian Collins. So I mentioned that Judge Collins was going to introduce our keynote speaker this evening. Now, right now, Judge Collins is a Superior Court judge in Wake County, and before that, he was the public defender in Wake County. He also, before that, went to Carolina Law School, and then before that, he went to Davidson College. Well, one of his claims to fame is that he and I graduated from the same class at Davidson College, and we were both economics majors. And I can assure you, one of the funniest people that I ever met in my life was Judge Brian Collins. And he made my stay in the economics department at Davidson College much more pleasant than it would have been otherwise. So Judge Collins, we're delighted to have you here this evening, and we'll let you take it away.
Janet Ward, thank you so much. And because you were so nice about that, I was going to tell everybody how long we've known each other, but I won't do that now. It starts with a 4. I'm just tickled to death to introduce your keynote speaker, although I wish I could introduce Judge Kovacs' classes. Those are fantastic. I wish we could see those classes again. Can you just put her up there one more time, please? Just humor me for just a minute, because I love those. You're not going to do it, are you? Okay, fine. All right. You might know our keynote speaker as a star athlete who represented our country in the Pan American Games twice. Or you might know her as a top-notch appellate lawyer. You might know her as a dedicated, distinguished law professor. And you might know her as a judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And she is all of that. But I know her as my best friend. I also know her as a nurturing mother to an 8-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son and a puppy named Elsa, who's 11 weeks old. I also know her as one of the most determined and tenacious people I've ever met. She is a force. But the great thing about that, and the really cool thing about your keynote speaker, is that she does all that with uncommon grace and uncommon humility. I'm really, really proud to be her husband, and I'm really happy to introduce you to the Honorable Allegra Collins.
Thank you, Brian. I should have told you not to introduce me in a way that would start me crying. That's a little hard to recover from, but I appreciate your very kind introduction. And Janet Ward, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. You are a role model and an inspiration, and someone I have looked up to for years. So it's an honor for me to be here. Chief Justice Beasley, Justice Hudson, Justice Irvin, Justice Earls, Chief Judge McGee, I believe, was with us, Judge Inman, Judge Brian Collins, Judge Kovacs, honorees and distinguished guests. It's an honor for me to speak to you on this occasion to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and to celebrate the top 50 women attorneys in North Carolina. Long ago now, when I first scanned the list of honorees, I wondered what wisdom I could impart on such an intelligent, experienced, and accomplished group of individuals. Naturally, I was inclined to talk about team handball. Did you know that team handball is the second most popular team sport in the entire world behind soccer? Did you know that it is not a sport where you hit a tiny ball against the wall with your hand, but it's actually a lot like water polo, and you throw a ball in the goal and you play on a court about the size of a basketball court. It's fast-paced, it's physical, and as Brian said, I was really fortunate to get to represent the United States twice in the Pan American Games as a member of our national team. And so many of the skills and life lessons that I learned playing team handball and other sports really translated into success in school, in the courtroom, on the bench, and on the campaign trail. But as we commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, I'd like to tell you a story about a heroine who's dubbed the most beautiful suffragist. In the decades leading up to 1848, a small number of women and a few men pushed against the restrictions that were imposed upon them by society. And then in 1848, at the Seneca Falls Convention, it was advertised as a convention to discuss the social, civil, and religious conditions and rights of women. But nearly 65 years after that, women had made very little headway toward women winning the right to vote. So some women moved from the parlors to the streets in an organized and more visible campaign. One of those women, the most beautiful suffragist, was my great aunt, Inez Milholland. She was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1886. Her father was a successful businessman. With his money, he became a founder and the first treasurer of the NAACP. Inez attended Vassar, where she was a standout athlete, thespian, and student. And she also started the suffrage movement at Vassar, enrolling nearly 2/3 of the students. She was once suspended for organizing a women's rights meeting. And the president of Vassar had forbidden suffrage meetings, but Inez and others held regular classes on the issue. Defying campus suffrage and meeting bans, she convened in the cemetery across the road. Upon graduation, she applied to study law at Oxford, at Cambridge, at Harvard, but she was denied admission because she was a woman. Undeterred, she applied to and was admitted to NYU Law School. She was one of the first women admitted to law school in the country. She graduated from NYU in 1912, and she opened her own law practice where she was helping women and poor people and striking laborers, and her causes were far-reaching. She was a member of the NAACP, the Women's Trade Union League, the Equality League of Self-Supporting Women in New York, and the National Child Labor Committee. She was also involved in the National American Women's Suffrage Association, which later branched into the National Women's Party. She became a leader and a popular speaker in the campaign circuit of the National Women's Party and worked closely with Alice Paul and Lucy Burns. She stepped into her first suffrage parade on May 7th, 1911, and she carried a sign that said, "Forward, out of error, leave behind the night, forward through the darkness, forward into light." And she quickly became the face of the suffrage movement, and the New York Sun wrote that there was no suffrage parade that was complete without Inez Milholland. In 1912, on horseback, she led 5,000 women through the streets of New York City, marching for the women's right to vote. On March 3rd, 1913, the day before President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, when she was just 27 years old, she made her most memorable appearance at the Women's Suffrage procession in Washington, D.C., which she had helped organize. A former teacher turned documentary filmmaker, Martha Wheelock, wrote, produced, and directed a short documentary on Inez. The entire 15-minute film is available on Vimeo and will be actually shown tomorrow night at the Women's National History Museum's virtual 100th anniversary event. But I would like to show you a brief clip about Inez's role in the famous women's suffrage procession in 1913. Are we able to roll that?
1913, Washington, D.C., the day before President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. The press and dignitaries are on hand. The streets are jammed with over 500,000 gawking onlookers. The march, a massive spectacle of 8,000 women displaying their demand for the right to vote. Their herald, Inez Milholland, a New York lawyer, a young, stunning suffragist. The marchers, Women from all walks of life, professions, classes, colleges, and states. Women from countries where they can vote march. From Finland, Norway, New Zealand, and Australia. 10 bands play. 28 vibrant floats move down Pennsylvania Avenue. The peaceful, dignified, colorful march is suddenly interrupted by surging mobs of men protesting and obstructing the women.
Men spat upon the women, slapped them in the face, tripped them, pelted them with cigar stubs, pulled them off floats, tore off their skirts, and cursed them. New York Times.
Now there appears a gallant figure out of the pressing throngs, a girl in white upon a white horse, dressed in flowing crusader's cloak, Inez Milholland. She courageously parts the way through the hordes of men and drives an opening for the marchers to continue. Hazel McKay.
The dignity of the marching women and the unruly behavior of the spectators creates press attention, public interest in the cause. The march also establishes Inez Milholland as the icon for the suffrage movement. Attractive, intelligent, political, and independent. This new woman rides astride her white horse into the future.
Janet Ward, before I go on, is there a noise? Brian came in and said that he was hearing a noise that's making it hard.
Allegra, we think it's the fan on your computer.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's...
What happens when you have a state-issued computer?
I think maybe if you just speak up, it'll probably be okay.
All right. I'll try to speak over the fray. Sorry about that. So that video never fails to give me chills. Just the vision of her on that white horse parting the onlookers and leading the women through the streets is truly amazing. And before we move on, that video, and by all accounts, some men disrupted the parade, but I also note that by all accounts, other men marched in the parade. And no group overcomes adversity on their own. And so we thank women and we thank the men who support women who continue to fight for equal rights for all. And in the 2 years following the procession, the Democratic Party refused basically to advance the cause of women's suffrage. And President Woodrow Wilson just ignored the women's plea. So while a majority of women in the United States at that point couldn't vote, women in 11 states, some women did have the right to vote. So the National Women's Party devised a plan to invade those 11 states with a speaking tour to urge those women who had the right to vote against President Woodrow Wilson in the next election. And Inez was the leader and the main attraction on that tour. So she headed west by train, accompanied by her sister, and she traveled through 9 states in 30 days, giving at least 50 speeches. She spoke on train platforms and cafes and hotel lobbies and large halls, and her reputation and dramatic flair drew very large crowds. Her arrival at each destination was met with great fanfare and media coverage. Although the intensity of the tour was taking its toll on her, and her family pleaded with her to take a break, she refused to stop or even slow down. And she reached Los Angeles in October 1916, and her health was in serious decline. Nevertheless, 1,500 people had gathered to hear her speak, and she spoke. And she gave a fiery speech imploring women voters of the West to use their votes to advance suffrage for all women. Her last public words before she collapsed on the podium were, "President Wilson, how long must women wait for liberty?" She was rushed to the hospital where she died 3 weeks later of pernicious anemia, and she was just 30 years old. Her death was national front page news, and the memorials were held for her across the nation, including one at Statuary Hall in the United States Capitol. It was the first memorial ever held there for a woman. But her death was a cry for her work to go on, and many of the women picketed in front of the White House carrying signs that said, "President Wilson, how long must we wait for liberty?" And the picketers were arrested, including my great Aunt Vida, went on hunger strikes and were actually force-fed in prison. But finally, on August 26, 1920, less than 4 years after Inez's death, the suffrage movement was passed by both houses and ratified to become the 19th Amendment. Although Inez did not live to see the results of her dedication, her legacy lives on. And as Chief Justice Beasley stated, we stand on the shoulders of the women who came before us and blazed the trail. Their struggles created opportunities for future generations of women to lead and serve. We stand on Inez's shoulders, and her struggles created opportunities for us to lead and to serve. Because of Inez's persistence and the persistence like others, we had the chance to go to law school. And following in her footsteps, we had the opportunity to build successful careers as women and as attorneys and advocates. And as a result of her trail, 164 women serve on our benches in the trial and appellate courts in North Carolina, including Chief Justice Beasley as the chief of the Supreme Court, and in fact, our entire judicial branch, and Chief Judge McGee as chief of our Court of Appeals. So on the eve of the 100th anniversary of the right to vote, and we know it didn't include everyone, and we have continued to work before equal voting for all. I implore you to exercise that right to vote. And just this morning, Chief Judge McGee and I were talking so fondly about Janet Ward's strong support of women lawyers. And for many years, she has had these events and others. And it brought to mind a quote from Inez. In 1916, she said, "This is our time to demonstrate our sisterhood, our spirit, our blithe courage, and our will. It is women for women, and shall be till this fight is won." And we stand on the shoulders of the women who have come before us, but let us be the shoulders to stand on for the women who come after us. And as we take advantage of the opportunities created for us to lead and serve, let us continue to create opportunities for future generations of women to lead and serve. So this is the time to demonstrate our sisterhood, our spirit, our blithe courage, and our will. And it is always women for women, and it always will be. Thank you.
Judge Collins, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you shared with all of us tonight. And I have to admit that I asked you more than a year ago to make this presentation, and in my wildest imaginings, I would have never known about your historical connection to this. And isn't it wonderful, ladies, that, you know, we normally would have had this event in the spring, but we got pushed off, and now we get to be on the eve of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to be able to celebrate. And what an amazing story about Inez Milholland, and I doubt that I will forget it. Now, we did send a little something to thank Judge Collins for her work, and I've asked her to have it there with her. And you ladies who are top 50 folks, you need to pay attention, because one's going to be sent to you as well in celebration of your award this evening. So Allegra, thank you so much for having the wrapping paper in your dress match. That's perfect. So go right ahead and open, if you will.
If you saw my daughter's room, it looks just about like this package. Usually don't tear wrapping paper, but I feel a little bit under the gun. This is amazing. Did you know that? She's in the middle.
Oh, what? You're kidding. No, I had no idea.
Inez Milholland Wazabane.
Okay, I had no idea. So ladies, what this is, it's a jigsaw puzzle with 500 pieces, and it identifies women who were important in the suffrage movement historically. And what a miracle that we've gotten to witness that something that I saw on Uncommon Goods and liked, thought ended up having the subject of our speaker this evening be the centerpiece of this puzzle. So it'll be a special memory for all of us. And thank you, Judges Collins, plural, for your participation tonight. So let's identify those in the top 50 who are with us this evening. So I'm going to call you out in alphabetical order, and we'll do the little spotlight on you, and hopefully we'll get the list right. If it appears that we have missed you, if you will put your name and your firm in the chat, I'll try to go back and make sure that we identify you as well. So our first top 50 this evening is Dottie Birch. Dottie is with Ragsdale Liggett in Raleigh. She does business, corporate work, real estate, animal law, and business litigation. Congratulations, Dottie.
Thank you so much.
Next is Jean Gordon Carter from McGuire Woods, estate planning and probate, nonprofit organization, and business tax. Congratulations, Jean. And then is Michelle Cannell still with us? We think she was, and that she may have dropped off. All right, then to Heather Culp. Heather is with Essex Richards in Charlotte, consumer, creditor, debtor rights, business litigation, bankruptcy, business. And our next honoree is Deborah Foster. Deborah is with the law office of Deborah Foster in Charlotte. Her specialty is estate planning and probate. Next is Felicia McDowell with Moore and Van Allen in Charlotte. Business litigation, criminal defense, white collar, and international. Congratulations, Felicia. Gina Morris with James McElroy and Deal, Charlotte, family lawyer. And then Maureen Demarest Murray of Fox Rothschild in Greensboro, healthcare. Missy Owen from 10 Fulton Walker and Owen in Charlotte, criminal defense, white collar. And then Leslie Packer of Ellison Winters in Raleigh, civil litigation, defense and personal injury, medical malpractice, and products liability. Next, Helen Parsonage with Elliott, Morgan, and Parsonage in Winston-Salem, immigration, consumer, and business. Patty Ramsewer with Fox Rothschild in Greensboro, employment and labor for the employer and civil litigation for the defense. Alice Carmichael Ritchie of Alexander Ricks in Charlotte, business litigation, intellectual property litigation, employment litigation, defense, civil litigation, defense. Elizabeth Davenport Scott of Williams Mullen in Raleigh, business litigation, personal injury, products, defense, personal injury, medical malpractice defense, and estate and trust litigation. Tricia Shields of Hedrick Gardner in Raleigh, civil litigation, defense, appellate, and general litigation. And Tricia is also running for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Caroline Wanamaker Sink of Robinson Bradshaw in Charlotte, real estate, business, government, finance, and banking. Robin Stinson of Bell Davis and Pitt in Winston-Salem, family law and ADR. Jill Strickland of Constangy Brooks in Winston-Salem, employment and labor for the employer and employment litigation for the defense. Jennifer Van Zant of Brooks Pierce in Greensboro, business litigation and antitrust litigation. Elizabeth Weddington Bolts, Beth Bolts, Witherspoon and Bolts in Raleigh, real estate, business and corporate. Dixie Wells of Ellison Winters in Greensboro, business litigation, civil litigation for defense, schools, and education. And lastly, Cotton Wright, Greer, Wright, and Martinez in Charlotte, bankruptcy on the business side. So let's congratulate all of our top 50 honorees this evening. So folks, I want to tell you again how grateful we are for us having the opportunity to come together with each of you. We thank you for sharing part of your evening with us. I am tickled pink that it is only 6:55, which means that we're ending 5 minutes early, which I had some concerns about earlier. And we do want to remind you to, if you will, please make a donation to Legal Aid of North Carolina. We will be sending an email in the next couple of days with the recording that has this link on it, but otherwise it's legalaidnc.org/donate. And you can also send a check or donate online through that particular site. Remember that we have the $5,000 match, and we want to make sure that we make great avail of that. And I'm hoping that one of these days that we'll be celebrating that we've raised $100,000 for Legal Aid of North Carolina. I can't think of a better group to do it than a group of lady lawyers. Our thanks to all of the folks who came from the different courts this evening, our dignitaries, our honorees, and then I want to particularly thank our volunteers, running through them quickly. From my firm, Maddie Calloway, Rhonda Holloway, Audrey Snyder, Janice Carlson, and Hannah Miller. And then from Legal Aid, remarkable work by Cherie Gilchrist and Diana Venfas and Megan Milner. And then our Zoom consultant, who is definitely getting whatever she wants, like a puppy from me, and that's Altina Lehman, because we've survived this evening and there was some concern. So congratulations to everyone. We hope you've had a wonderful time. Thank you for being a part. Good night.
Congratulations. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Good night.
Congratulations to everyone. Thank you, Janet Ward. This was wonderful.
It was great. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you so much.
Every year.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Janet
Take
Ward.
care. Hey, Megan.